When Sam was a little boy, he believed his father was the strongest man in the world. Every morning, his father climbed the 184 steps of the lighthouse where he worked. Every evening, he climbed back down. He carried buckets of oil, pulled heavy ropes, and polished the great glass lens until it shone like a star. His hands were rough and wide. His shoulders were broad. He never complained. To Sam, he was a giant, but as Sam grew older, he began to see a different truth. His father wasn't just strong. He was quiet. He could sit for hours without speaking, watching the gray sea from the window. He never talked about Sam's mother, who had died when Sam was a baby. He kept many things locked away inside himself, like old letters in a forgotten drawer. And between Sam and his father, the lighthouse stood. He gave his best hours to it, not to his son. The lighthouse was always there, tall and white against the sky, standing on a rocky point at the edge of the town. It had guided ships for over 100 years. Its great lamp turned slowly every night, sweeping beams of light across the dark water. When Sam was young, he thought the light was magic. When he grew older, he thought it was just a machine. But either way, he knew it was his rival. The lighthouse had his father's heart, not him. By the time Sam was 21, he had stopped trying to understand his father. He moved to the city, found a job in an office, and built a life far from the sound of the sea. He came home for Christmas, sometimes for birthdays, but his visits were short and polite. He would sit at the kitchen table while his father made tea, and they would talk about small things, the weather, the news, the price of oil. They never talked about the real things. They never talked about the gap between them. And then, one cold Tuesday in November, Sam received a phone call. "Mr. Sam?" said a voice he didn't recognize. "It's Dr. Harris from the Coast Hospital. Your father has been taken ill. You should come." Sam felt the world stop for a moment. Then he packed a small bag, bought a train ticket, and was back in the old town before sunset. The hospital smelled of clean floors and quiet waiting. He found his father in a small room near the end of a long corridor. He was lying in a bed, and for the first time in his life, he didn't look like a giant. He looked small. His hands, which had once lifted heavy buckets, now lay still on the white sheet. His eyes were closed. A machine beside him beeped in a slow, steady rhythm. Beep. Pause. Beep. Pause. It was the loneliest sound Sam had ever heard. Dr. Harris was a kind-faced woman with tired eyes. She spoke gently. "Your father has a weak heart," she said. "He needs rest. He needs care. But he's stable for now. He'll be able to go home in a few days, if someone can stay with him." Sam didn't hesitate. "I'll stay." He returned to the lighthouse keeper's cottage the next morning. The small stone house sat at the foot of the lighthouse, protected from the wind by a low wall. Inside, nothing had changed since his childhood. The same worn armchair by the fireplace, the same faded curtains, the same photographs on the mantelpiece. There was a photo of his mother taken on a sunny day long ago. She was beautiful, with long brown hair and a smile that seemed to hold a secret. Beside it was a photo of Sam as a small boy, sitting on his father's shoulders, his arms stretched wide like he was flying. Sam stood in the doorway and looked around. The house was still. The fire had long since gone out. It was then that he noticed something he had never seen before. On his father's bedside table there was a small wooden box. It was simple and plain, with no carvings or designs. but it was the only thing in the house that looked clean and cared for. He opened it. Inside he found letters, dozens of them, all addressed to him, all in his father's handwriting. Some were short, some were longer, but every single one began with the same words, "My dear Sam," and not one of them had ever been sent. Sam sat down on the edge of his father's bed. His hands were trembling. He opened the first letter. "My dear Sam, today you are 5 years old. We ate cake in the garden. You told me you want to be a sailor when you grow up. I told you you can be anything. You fell asleep in my arms. I have never been so happy." Sam read the next one. "My dear Sam, today you started school. You were scared. I held your hand at the gate. You didn't want to let go, but you were brave. You walked inside without looking back. I was so proud of you I couldn't speak. Letter after letter, year after year." His father had written about everything. Sam's first lost tooth, his first school play, his first failed exam, his first winter away from home. He had recorded his son's life with quiet, steady devotion. He had kept every memory alive on paper, even while he had stayed silent in person. And then he came to the last letter. It was dated only a few weeks ago. "My dear Sam, I don't know if I will ever give you these. I don't know if I have the courage. But I want you to know something. I have loved you every day of your life. I loved you when I was climbing the lighthouse steps. I loved you when I was watching the sea. I loved you when I was too tired to speak and too proud to say I was wrong. I am not a man of many words. I never have been, but I have always, always loved you." Sam sat very still. The letter shook in his hands. Outside, the wind blew against the windows. The sea crashed against the rocks. And inside the little stone house, something that had been cold for a very long time began, slowly, to warm. His father came home 3 days later. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane. His face was pale and his movements were careful, but his eyes were still sharp. When he saw Sam waiting at the door, he stopped. "You came back," he said. His voice was rough but quiet. Sam nodded. "I came back." There was a long, heavy pause. Then, very softly, Sam said, "I found the letters." His father's face changed. Something flickered behind his eyes. Fear, maybe, or hope. He looked down at the floor. "I didn't know how to say things," he said. "When your mother died, something closed inside me. I thought if I didn't feel too much, I wouldn't hurt too much. But I was wrong. I hurt you instead." Sam stepped forward. He didn't speak. He simply put his arms around his father. The old man stood very still for a moment, and then he slowly lifted his free arm and held his son. They stood like that for a long while in the cold hallway, while the wind blew outside and the gray sea watched from the shore. From that day, everything shifted. Not quickly and not perfectly. Real life doesn't work like that. But something had opened. The silence between them was no longer a wall. It was a space where words could finally grow. As his father regained his strength, he began to share small things with Sam. He told him about his mother, how they met at a village dance, how she had a loud, wonderful laugh that filled any room, how she would stand at the top of the lighthouse with him, watching storms roll in from the sea, unafraid of the wind or the rain, how she held baby Sam in her arms and said, "He's going to be someone special." For the first time, Sam learned who his mother truly was. She wasn't just a photograph on the mantelpiece. She was a person with a voice and a laugh and a love for wild weather, and his father, the quiet lighthouse keeper, had carried that love inside him all these years, like a secret flame he was too afraid to share. One afternoon, when the sky was heavy with gray clouds, his father looked at him and said, "Would you like to see the lighthouse, the way I see it?" Sam hesitated. The lighthouse had always been the thing that took his father away from him. But things were different now. He nodded. They walked together up the winding path to the lighthouse door. His father unlocked it with a heavy iron key. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of oil and stone. They began to climb. One step after another, around and around the narrow spiral staircase. 184 steps. Sam's legs burned, but he didn't stop. His father climbed slowly, one step at a time, and he stayed beside him. At the top, there was a heavy door. His father pushed it open, and they stepped out onto the narrow iron balcony that circled the great glass lantern room. The wind hit Sam's face, fresh and sharp. The sea stretched out in every direction, a deep gray-green-white waves breaking against the rocks below. Above them, the sky was endless, layers of silver and gray and pale blue moving with the wind. A few seagulls hung on the air, barely moving, as if they were watching them. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then his father said, "This is where I've always talked to you." Sam turned to look at him. He smiled, a small, sad smile. "You didn't hear me, but I talk to you every day, up here with the wind and the sea. I told you about my day. I told you I was proud of you. I told you I missed you." Sam's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't look away. "The letters," he said softly. "They were here too." His father nodded. "I wrote them up here. When the lamp was lit and the ships were safe, I would sit with a piece of paper and a pencil. I wrote you letters in the light." Sam took a deep breath. The air tasted like salt and distance. He looked out at the sea and thought about all the years his father had stood in this exact spot, sending him words he could never say out loud. "Will you show me?" he asked. His father nodded. Every evening. That evening, as the sun began to sink into the sea, Sam stood beside his father in the lantern room. He showed him how the great lamp worked. The oil, the wick, the enormous curved lens that turned slowly, bending the light into a powerful beam. He showed him how the mechanism rotated with a steady, almost silent hum, carrying the beam across the dark water in a perfect, sweeping rhythm. He showed him the logbook where he recorded the weather, the sea conditions, the ships that passed, and then, when the sky was dark and the stars were out, he took a key from his pocket and unlocked a small wooden cupboard Sam had never noticed before. Inside, neatly stacked, were dozens of small notebooks, all filled with handwriting, all letters to him, years and years of words stored up in the silence of the lighthouse, waiting. "There are more," his father said quietly. "I never stopped writing." Sam knelt down and touched the notebooks. They were old and worn, the pages soft from being turned. He opened the first one. "My dear Sam, today the sea is rough. A storm is coming. I am thinking of you." He closed his eyes. The light from the lamp swept slowly around them, a steady circle of brightness in the dark. And in the gentle rhythm of the turning light, he finally understood what his father had been doing all those years. He wasn't just keeping ships safe. He was keeping his love for his son alive. Sam decided to stay. He didn't plan it. He didn't make a big announcement. But the days passed and he didn't leave. He took care of his father as he grew stronger. He learned to cook the simple meals his father liked: fish stew, fresh bread, hot tea. He walked with him along the cliffs slowly, letting the old man lean on his arm. He sat with him in the evenings while he read, the fire crackling softly in the hearth, and every evening, when the sun began to lower and the sky turned orange and pink, they climbed the 184 steps together. Every evening his father opened the small cupboard and showed him another notebook, another letter, another memory. Sam would read them aloud, his voice soft against the sound of the wind and the turning lamp. He read about the day he learned to ride a bicycle, the day he won a prize at school, the day he left for the city. And as he read, he realized something beautiful. His father had never missed a single important moment of his life. He had just been watching from a distance, recording it all in silence. One evening, a few weeks after they had started the new routine, his father handed him an empty notebook and a pencil. "It's your turn," he said. "Write something." Sam sat down in the chair by the lantern. The light swept slowly around him, a gentle, repeating circle. He looked out at the dark sea, at the distant lights of ships, at the stars beginning to appear in the sky. And he began to write, "My dear father, today I climbed the lighthouse steps with you again. My legs hurt, but I am happy. I never knew how much of you was up here. I never knew how much you gave to this light. I think I understand now. Thank you for writing all those words. Thank you for keeping them safe for me. I will keep them safe too." He closed the notebook and looked at his father. The old man didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He simply nodded, and his eyes were full of quiet light. Time passed. The seasons turned. His father grew older, slower, but he never stopped climbing the lighthouse steps, and Sam never stopped climbing with him. When his father finally became too frail to make the climb, Sam climbed alone. He lit the lamp. He turned the mechanism. He filled the logbook. And every night when the great beam swept out across the water, he felt his father with him, in the light, in the silence, in the steady rhythm of the turning lens. Before he died, he gave Sam one last letter. It was very short. "My dear Sam, you were the best light I ever kept. Love, Dad." Sam kept that letter in the small wooden box beside all the others. And when he grew old and his own hair turned gray and he could no longer climb the steps, he would sit by the fire in the little stone house and he would read the letters, and he would remember. The lighthouse still stands today. Its lamp still turns. And if you visit that quiet town on the edge of the sea, you might hear someone say that on certain winter nights, when the wind is strong and the stars are hidden, you can see two lights shining from the top of the tower. One is the great lamp sweeping steady across the waves. And the other, people say, is the light of a father's love, a love that never ever went out.